Let me start with a question. What is the most valuable thing that we have? Is it our careers, our business, our family, our mission? Whatever your answer is, there is one thing that all of it depends on you, our ability to think clearly, to move, to make decisions, and to show up. And our health is interesting because we often appreciate it most when we begin to lose it. When our phone hits a 10%, then we look for the charger. When my car gives me the warning light, it's only then that I start paying attention. But how often do we see warning lights in our own lives and simply keep going? We tell ourselves, I'll focus on my health when things slow down. But if you have people depending on you, a meaningful career, a family, a ministry, or a mission, life may never really slow down. So perhaps the question isn't when will I finally have time for my health? Maybe the better question is, how do I build my health into the life and mission I've been called to? Because my health and your health is personal, but its consequences really are. And today, I want us to examine how we can protect the health that our lives and our missions depend on. Here's the premise of this presentation. My goal is by no means to overload us with more health facts. In fact, many people already know a surprising amount about health. They know that sleep matters. They know that movement matters. They understand that food and nutrition is important. We understand stress matters and that we need to manage these things. The challenge is that real life often defeats the best of intentions. So today, we're not merely asking, what health information do I need? We're asking, what systems would make the right things more likely to actually get me to the life that I'm looking for? I also want to be clear about the scope of this presentation. It is completely educational. It's not medical advice or diagnosis or treatment. If you live with things like diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, take medication. Or if you have serious health concerns, please partner with a qualified health professional before making any sort of major changes to your diet and your lifestyle. So this is the central thesis for our talk today, that health is personal, but its consequences rarely are. If I'm fatigued, depleted, inflamed, or overwhelmed, or spiritually discouraged, it may begin in my body and my mind, but it doesn't stop there. It affects how I speak to my family. It affects how I lead. It affects my patience, creativity, resilience, my decision making, and my ability to keep my commitments. That is why this message is by no means guilt driven, it is stewardship driven. We're not saying that health is the ultimate purpose in life. Health is not the mission. Health is a form of capacity for the mission. So throughout today, I want us to keep one question very, very close in our minds. What depends on me being healthy enough to continue showing up? And even more deeper, who depends on me being healthy enough to continue showing up and doing the right thing? That question, my friends, gives us a deeper meaning to the why of focusing on health. In the type 2 diabetes manuscript that I'm actually putting together, and I'm creating a book on type 2 diabetes, one of the central themes for my book is this: a diagnosis can feel like a verdict, but it's not a prophecy. That is especially important for conditions connected to any sort of metabolic health that I focus on, such as insulin resistance, prediabetes, or type 2 diabetes. These conditions are very serious and they do deserve serious care. Medication can be life saving. Medical supervision matters, but we should also recognize that the body is responsive. It responds to food, movement, sleep, stress, environment, body composition, our spiritual outlook, and the support that we have in our life. So the message is not to ignore medicine, it's not to stop medication. No, the message is that we shouldn't be doing these things on our own. The message is to understand the landscape, to work with our healthcare team, but also to build a system that helps my life and supports my health instead of constantly working against it. The principles apply well beyond type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes. It applies whenever a person knows that they need change but lacks the reliable path to implement it. That's the whole reason I created my company. One of the analogies from my book is this idea of a dashboard and a warning light. When the warning light comes on in the car, the light matters. We shouldn't ignore it. But the light is not the engine problem. It is the signal telling us that something deeper needs attention. In type 2 diabetes, high blood sugar is one of the clearest signals. But the deeper issue is often insulin resistance, the cells being stuck with too much saturated fat, and the body is struggling to respond properly to insulin and handle this fuel inefficiency. The same principles apply to many health markers, blood pressure, right? It's something that matters, or A1C that matters, the tracking our blood sugar over the past 3 months. The cholesterol panel matters. The scale may matter, my weight. But those markers are all pointing to patterns. They're asking us to examine the way our lives are structured. This is why implementation matters. We do need medical care, but we also need to address the daily conditions that are producing the pattern that can be giving us all these issues. The numbers from the CDC and about national diabetes statistics are very, very clear. And the reason I'm showing them is not to frighten anyone, but to make the issue visible. Diabetes and prediabetes are common, and they are often connected to the same areas of life that we'll be discussing today: food, movement, stress, rest, support, and the environment around us. But the deeper point is this: if the solution were simply people need more information, we would already be healthy. The problem is much more complex. A person can understand the importance of exercise and still have no protected time to exercise. They can understand healthy eating and still live in a food environment designed for convenience. They can understand rest and still be trapped in a constant state of this is urgent. That is the gap that Altiora, my business, Altiora Vitality Partners, is built around. The gap between knowing and implementing. A key part of this message is balance. Medicine can be life saving, and for many people, medication is not a failure. It is a tool that protects the body while deeper work is being done. In diabetes care, for example, medication may lower blood sugar and reduce the risks of having high blood sugar. That is very important. But if the daily conditions that contributed to the insulin resistance in the first place are never being addressed, then the person may remain trapped in a cycle of management without true support or change. So, I'm not here to create a false battle between medical care and lifestyle changes. I believe that the wise path is integration. Clinical professionals handle the diagnosis, the medication, and the medical risk and monitoring, while implementation support from a company like myself or a company like someone else can actually help the person make this plan work in their real life scenario. For many people, the missing layer is not more knowledge, not even access to advice. The missing layer is follow through, environmental design, accountability, and practical coordination. So when we say the mission that our when we say that our mission depends on our health, we do not mean that health is the mission. What I mean is that health supplies the capacity for the mission. So here are five capacities that I want us to consider. Energy. This is the ability to act, to serve, to move and execute. Next is clarity. That's your ability to make wise decisions, not living in brain fog. Next is resilience, the ability to handle pressure, disappointment, uncertainty, and conflict. It's so important in today's day and age. Next is pressure, the ability to be emotionally available to people we love and to those whom we lead. Lastly, we have continuity. I love this word. This is the ability to remain faithful over time and not be constantly interrupted by preventable breakdowns. Many people do not notice health declines all at once. They notice that their patience is thinner, their recovery is slower, their decisions are harder to come to. They're making decisions more on their emotion rather than on logic. Their exercise just disappears out of their life. Prayer or meditation becomes rushed, food becomes reactive, and eventually they're still physically present, but their capacity is eroding. This is why health protection is proactive stewardship. One of the practical exercises I encourage is the dependency map. So before asking what diet should I follow or what workout should I do, the question that I want to ask first is what depends on my capacity? Who is counting on me? For some of you, the answer may be family. Your spouse, your children, your parents, or grandchildren need more than just your provision. They need your presence. For some, your answer is work, right? Your decision affects your teams, your clients, your income, or a business. For some of us, it's ministry, a community that we serve. For others, it may be a personal mission that God has placed in your heart. This is not meant to create pressure or guilt. It is meant to reveal meaning. When the reason is strong enough, health stops being a shallow improvement project and becomes a stewardship task. So we should probably ask ourselves, if my health and capacity declined over the next year, what and who would be affected first? This is the core problem that Altior is designed to address, the health implementation gap. Many people are not ignorant that they know what to do, but their life is unfortunately not structured for them to do it consistently. Between knowing and doing stands daily life. Daily life includes the calendar. If the calendar does not protect health, health becomes optional. It includes the environment. If the easiest food choices are constantly the worst choices, willpower will eventually lose. This also includes stress, right? If stress is unprocessed and I'm not handling it with care, it will look or I will end up looking for an outlet. This also includes my travel, my work pressure, my family dynamics, emotional habits, and isolation. This is what real life looks like. So we should start asking only, what am I why am I not disciplined enough? Sometimes the better question truthfully is what systems are keeping me back and pulling me back into the same negative pattern. Health change becomes much more realistic when we redesign the system, not just the intention. When people tell me that they have tried and failed many times, I know I know that the first question I have to ask them is which one of the systems broke first? Usually it's one of three. First, and most often, it's the calendar. And I'll be honest, I've seen this many times in my life. If health has no protected time, it has to compete with everything else. And anything that is not protected usually gets pushed aside by what we deem as urgent. Second is environment. Under pressure, we do not rise to the level of our ideals. We usually default to whatever is accessible, easy, familiar, and most importantly, emotionally rewarding. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not do what we think is best. We do what we feel like doing. We are human beings that operate very largely off of what we feel like doing, even sometimes when we know what to do, it's not what we feel like what to do. That is why changing our food environment, our sleep environment, our work environment, and our social environment matters so much. The third thing we got to focus on, and I always want to ask my clients, is support. Most people are trying to carry on change privately while life applies pressure publicly. That is very, very difficult to do. We often need encouragement from others, accountability, structure, and sometimes even professional coordination. The goal is not to shame the person, the goal is to strengthen your systems. So, one of the first places our health system breaks is in our recovery. We often treat rest as a reward, the reward that we earn after work is finished. But meaningful work is rarely ever finished. I mean, the type of work that I do, I want to do this till I die. So the question then is my family, I mean, my ministry, right, my businesses, my responsibilities are going to continuously ask for more. So I must make the mental shift that recovery is not laziness. Recovery is actually a part of stewardship. If we're constantly sleeping less, never detaching from work, never allowing our body or our mind to recover, our capacity will eventually decline. This is especially relevant to people who have metabolic health concerns. Sleep and stress patterns can influence appetite, glucose regulation, weight, blood pressure, and emotional resilience. From a faith perspective, rest is also an act of trust. It acknowledges that we are creatures, not machines. We are created to be stewards, not saviors. So we have to ask ourselves, where am I constantly trading recovery for assumed production? And what is that trade actually costing me? Because a lot of times we look at what we're gaining from not resting, but we neglect to look at what we're losing. And often the cost of what we're losing is much greater than what we deem to gain. Food chain. This is a big one. Food chain often fails because we build a menu, but not an environment. So the real question again is not only what is a healthy meal, the question is what food choice will I actually make on Tuesday when I'm tired, busy, stressed, and the day did not go as planned? This is why implementation has to include things like shopping, preparation, household patterns, travel, restaurants, workday routines, and family expectations. In metabolic health, food matters deeply, but we should avoid reducing people to a list of forbidden foods. The goal is to build a way of eating that supports insulin sensitivity, our energy, our satiety. That means how full I feel, and consistency while still being realistic for the life and person that we actually are looking to lead. So we start small, right? What is one food environment change that would make a healthier choice easier this week for me? It might be breakfast. It might be lunch prep. It might be removing one recurring trigger food, you know, the chips that we store in my cupboard. It might be deciding where we're going to eat before I'm hungry. Movement. This is a big one. Movement is one of the most practical ways that the body improves its ability to handle fuel. In type 2 diabetes education, I often let my clients know that movement is described as helping the muscles use glucose and improving insulin sensitivity without necessarily having to rely on insulin. But for many people, the obstacle is not knowing that movement matters, it is making movement realistic. The World Health Organization, WHO, and diabetes guidelines commonly recommend at least 150 minutes per week of moderate to vigorous activity for adults, along with muscle strengthening activity. For many people, that number can feel a bit too large. So the critical question is, what is my baseline? And what is the next faithful step? If someone is sedentary, walking after meals may be a meaningful beginning. If someone's already active, strength training might be the missing piece. And if someone has complications, heart concerns, neuropathy, severe obesity, or uses glucose lowering medication, professional guidance matters here. The goal is not heroic exercise. The goal, ladies and gentlemen, is consistency, wise movement that supports capacity. Stress is not only a schedule issue, right? We spoke about this earlier. It is also a story issue. Two people can face the same pressure and tell two completely different stories about what it means. One story creates despair, another creates responsibility and hope. This is where emotional regulation becomes part of health, and your sleep ties into this. Simple pattern is pause, name, reframe, and choose. We want to pause before reacting so we can think clearly. We want to name what we're feeling instead of pretending it's not there and shoving it under the rug. We want to reframe the situation after we've named it and put the light into it in light of our values and our future. Then we get to choose. We get to choose the next action. Although we can't change what happens, we can decide what we do next that agrees with who we are becoming, not who we were. This matters for health because many unhealthy patterns aren't really about hunger or laziness. They're coping strategies, stress eating, staying up late, skipping movement, constant scrolling. Overwork and emotional withdrawal often reveal unprocessed pressure. A whole person health plan must make room for emotional and spiritual recovery. Most people have tried changing alone. They download the plan, they bought the book, they made the promise, and for a short time, then life became complicated again. There is wisdom, ladies and gentlemen, in support. The question is not only how do I change, it is also who can help me make my change sustainable. A qualified physician or clinician is essential for diagnosis, medication, monitoring, and medical safety, as we spoke about at the beginning of this presentation. A functional educator, however, can help with translation, turning their recommendation for food into an actual schedule, movement, accountability, routines, and support. Family and community matter because most health decisions happen in social environments. And spiritual foundations matter because health change requires humility, hope, patience, and perseverance. This isn't weakness. Again, it's wisdom. If important responsibilities depend on my health, then building the support around my health is not indulgence, it's responsible stewardship. Altura's working implementation lens is called Ascend. It's not a medical protocol, it's an operating system for moving from information into real life application. A is for assess and align. Understand where we are, what we're trying to protect, and the guidance that already exists in my life. S is for safeguard, keeping proper medical, safety, and scope boundaries. C is for construct. We want to build daily systems for food, movement, stress, rest. I said stress, but sleep is what I meant to say. Schedule, home, and support. E is for embed. This is where we want to make the system work in my actual life. We want to include work days, restaurants, travel, family, and pressure. N is for navigate. We want to prepare for the obstacles instead of being shocked by them and caught off guard. D is for document. You got to track what works, what breaks, and what needs to be continued. I had a mentor that always used to tell me, Garfield, whatever is measured can be improved upon. This is a helpful way to think because most people want to jump straight from inspiration to action without actually building a system that can carry the action. When people are inspired, we often try to change everything. We want to fix food, sleep, exercise, stress, hydration, supplements, screen time, prayer, and schedule all at once. That usually creates a burst of momentum and then a collapse. A better thing to do, I believe, is in the first week, have an honest first week. Day one, it depends on me. Day two, figure out where is there friction in my life. Day three, what health time must be protected. Day four, what part of the environment must change. Day five, Who supports this part of my environment or this part of my life? Day 6, what recovery is missing? And day 7, if the next 90 days look like the last 90 days, will my health be better supported, less supported? This is why the scorecard that I'll mention later leads into a 7-day health and mission reset. We're not trying to diagnose anyone, but it does help you see the system much more clearly and focus on the next faithful step. This part of the presentation is especially for founders, owners, executives, ministry leaders, and people carrying out major responsibilities. But even if it's not your role, listen in for the principle. Organizations often plan for great financial risk, operational risk, technology failure, and market destruction. But many do not honestly assess how dependent an organization or a business can be on one person's health, their energy, their clarity, and their availability. If the founder is exhausted, decision making changes. If the leader is chronically stressed, culture changes. If the key person has no recovery, no delegation, no health support, the organization may look strong externally while being fragile internally. Again, this isn't about fear, it's about continuity. If people, income, clients, or employees, family, or my ministry depend heavily on me, then protecting my health, protecting your health, is part of protecting the mission that has been entrusted to you. Here is the question I want every one of us to sit with. If we had to step away from our normal responsibilities for 30 days, what and who would be affected first? For some, it would be family rhythms. For others, it would be your income. For others yet, it would be clients, employees, ministry, caregiving, or community responsibilities. For me, sometimes the hardest part is to admit that I have to do my own recovery and that I don't have the structure, which is why I too have mentors and people who coach me and guide me. This question is not meant to alarm us. It's meant to reveal where our continuity needs strengthening. Some people discover that everything depends on their personal effort. Nothing is documented. No one else knows the rhythm of their schedule, and no one else can be supporting the plan. The healthiest time to build support is before crisis forces it. That is true in business, true in family, true in ministry, and in personal health. At this point, I do want to showcase a very special offer. And actually, I'm going to skip to the last slide here because I really wanted to put together something special for those who are going to be watching this recording. Health is not the mission, it's the capacity for the mission, as I said earlier. And I wanted to create something where each and every single one of us could get a very clear snapshot of what our body and our lives and health is really looking like. So if you scan the QR code on the screen or go to this website, outyourvitalitypartners.com, you're going to be able to get guided through a short assessment that's going to give you a very clear picture as to what your health looks like right now. See, your health is personal, but again, the consequences really are. It touches your family, your work, your leadership, your mission, and the people who rely on your presence. So please, ladies and gentlemen, protect it, not from a position of fear, but from stewardship. I invite you again to scan the QR code because if this message gave language to something that you've been feeling, take the scorecard, ladies and gentlemen. Let it help you identify the next place to strengthen your system. And if it would be helpful, I would be honored to speak with you in a private 30-minute clarity conversation where you too can see the exact pitfalls and the exact next steps to take your health from where it is now to the next elevated level. I'm grateful and glad that you were able to listen to this presentation. It says a lot about who you are, that you were willing to spend 30 minutes dedicated to learning more about how to implement systems into your personal health, not from a position of indulgence, but from a position of being able to serve your community better, and serve those who depend on you. Till next time.